Social Security. The check they get each month helps pay for their food, their medicine, their rent, their mortgage, if they still have a mortgage. And this administration is intent on slashing Social Security so that they can get more tax breaks for their billionaire buddies. I never thought I'd see the day, but that's what's happening. And if you don't believe us, listen to them. Musk says it's a Ponzi scheme. Tell the 78-year-old lady who needs it for medicine that it's a Ponzi scheme, that she shouldn't get her check. Trump spent 10 minutes lying about Social Security when he addressed the joint session. And now we have the Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Lutnick, saying his mother-in-law wouldn't mind missing a check. Well, no mother-in-law would miss minding a check if they have a billionaire son-in-law. It's outrageous, the callousness, the meanness, the viciousness of what they're doing. Now, their goal is clear: destroy Social Security from within. Make it so unworkable, so inefficient, that Donald Trump has the pretext to slash benefits, to kill it, and then privatize the program. Because it's very clear what's happening right now. What they're doing is, in effect, a benefit cut. Seniors across America aren't getting the help they need to get their checks. They're closing offices. I believe they intend to close 60% of all the Social Security offices. The citizens in Chemung County in New York and Elmira, I just was speaking to them, were outraged that they're closing that office. They're closing the White Plains office, which 200,000 people come to every year. And what is the intent? Kill Social Security by strangling it, by not letting it work, by making it so that it's impossible for people to get their help and their benefits. 7,000 workers being laid off. You know what that means? Some people could wait up to 3 years to get their benefits. That's what they're doing. And it is simply, simply outrageous. The acting commissioner, handpicked by DOGE, said Musk's claims of fraud are false. And Musk, by the way, at one point said, let's eliminate it. They've revealed their true colors. Trump and Musk are just eroding the American dream. They're rigging the system for billionaires while stealing from the elderly, from the disabled, to cut taxes for their billionaire club. Senate Republicans, every Senate Republican should be demanding that Musk reverse the firings. If they say they believe in Social Security, then they ought to be telling Musk, stop. But Senate Republicans are just silent, letting it happen. They're afraid of Trump. Now, yesterday, at the hearing in the Finance Committee, which Ron and Maria were at, we heard from Trump's pick to lead the Social Security Administration, Frank Bisignano. To confirm Mr. Bisignano as head of Social Security is hiring an arsonist to run the fire station. I've known this guy for 20 years. He's a cutter. Companies bring him in to slash benefits, companies bring him in to slash workers, and his claim to fame is cutting and shrinking. The last person we need to run the Social Security office. President Trump, if he cares at all about Social Security, should withdraw his nomination immediately. This man should not be running Social Security. Trump said in his campaign he wanted to preserve Social Security. He's already dismantling it, and with Bisignano, he's likely to destroy it. President Trump, withdraw his name now. Time is short to stop permanent damage to Social Security. If Republicans continue to do it, the political backlash will just be unprecedented. Ron.
Schumer, and let me bring you up to date on yesterday. The Finance Committee and the American people yesterday saw a gobsmacking performance by the nominee to run Social Security. As Donald Trump and Elon Musk and their cronies rampage through Social Security, disrupting customer service for seniors and Americans with disabilities and threatening their earned benefits, we heard truly ominous testimony from the nominee to run this program. Americans want to see some reassurances that a steady hand would be put in place to right the ship and to make Social Security drama-free. Instead, this nominee, Frank Bisignano, lied to the Senate Finance Committee about his involvement with DOGE since his nomination in December. Here's what happened. A whistleblower reached out to my staff, and their testimony shows that the nominee appears to be the puppet master behind the chaos at Social Security. Last night, after the hearing, the Washington Post newspaper spoke to multiple sources and independently verified the whistleblower's account. So this development in the last 24 hours has created a trust gap between the nominee and the American people before he's even in the door. He handpicked DOGE agents and pressured Social Security employees to cut corners to get them on the job faster. He told Social Security staff not to hire anybody without his explicit approval. He was aware of plans to shutter regional offices, close the offices of civil rights, anti-fraud, and modernization. He was aware of DOGE's plans to reduce the workforce by thousands of people. He was also aware of sweeping personal data that DOGE agents were requesting, and that those requests flew in the face of privacy law and agency safeguards to ensure Americans' most valuable personal information is protected. Social Security is effectively the Fort Knox of Americans' private information, banking information, medical records, home addresses, children's names, and more. It is still not completely clear what information DOGE has access to and what they are doing with it. So under this cloud of deception, as the ranking Democrat in the Finance Committee, working very closely with my colleague who's a privacy expert, among other things, I'm of the view the Finance Committee must not proceed with the vote on this nominee. At a minimum, there ought to be a bipartisan investigation into the allegations. And if that confirms what the whistleblower has told my staff, as I believe it will, this nominee ought to withdraw. My Republican colleagues here have an opportunity to prove they simply won't tolerate being lied to at the Senate Finance Committee. The stakes are too high for seniors and Americans with disabilities who are terrified of losing their earned benefits. And thank you. Who would you like to go next? Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Senator Schumer, Leader Schumer. Thank you, Senator Wyden. I'm good to be here with my colleague, Senator Van Hollen. Social Security is a contract between citizens and their government so they can retire with dignity. 1.4 million people in the state of Washington want that right of what they sacrificed and paid in to have that retirement. But what have they gotten out of the Trump administration? The Trump administration has taken many steps to undermine Social Security. First, cutting the workforce, then trying to cut offices, then coming up with a suggestion that you should re-register to even qualify for Social Security. Is that any way to meet the contractual obligation our government has to help people have a minimal amount of dignity in retirement? But no, instead, this administration is trying to claim fraud. We heard the President of the United States go on and on at the State of the Union about fraud. Well, Mr. President, it is your billionaire cabinet and DOGE leader that are defrauding the American public from their right to retirement with Social Security. One of my constituents had the unfortunate mishap of being claimed dead. Literally, they said he was dead and should not get a Social Security check. Not only did he have to go back down to the office in Seattle to try to reclaim his check and stand in line for hours and hours, he found out that they had clawed back his previous Social Security checks from January and December. So why does my constituent have to live through what is just a barrage of DOGE people trying to claim fraud when he can't even get his own retirement? Mr. Johnson said the Social Security Administration needs more resources, not less resources. If you have a contractual obligation to give them their check that they paid into, then give it to them in a timely basis. And Secretary Lutnick's ridiculous idea that somehow that a senior, I guess he is so out of touch with the American people that he doesn't understand that people are depending on that for a lifeline. And yet he thinks they can wait months and months to find out, and he's helping empower an organization that is clawing back the checks out of people's bank accounts when they desperately need it for food and medicine. I hope this administration will pay attention to these obligations and understand that they are advocating for undermining of Social Security, undermining people who deserve the benefits, and undermining our obligation to help people retire with dignity.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you. Thank you to Senator Schumer and my colleagues. I'm proud to represent the 12,000 patriotic federal employees who work at the Social Security Administration in the state of Maryland, who every day faithfully deliver promised benefits to 73 million of their fellow Americans. And we need to get some facts straight. This is an organization that runs efficiently. As the former Social Security Commissioner O'Malley has reminded us, Allstate operates at an 11% overhead. Liberty Mutual operates at a 23% overhead. The Social Security Administration, it operates at a 0.5% overhead. Social Security Administration and those employees have never missed a payment. And they're also operating today at a 50-year low in terms of personnel. So this has nothing to do with government efficiency. This has everything to do with the most corrupt bargain in American history. Elon Musk spent $280 million to elect Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has installed Elon Musk in the cockpit of our government to rig the government for people like Elon Musk, people who are already rich and already powerful, and to do that at everybody else's expense. We're also seeing, as my colleague said, other billionaire members of the cabinet saying things like, Americans wouldn't miss their Social Security payment unless they were fraudsters. Right. Well, say that to the 73 million Americans who do depend, so many of them, on that Social Security check. And Elon Musk, we have news for him. Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. It's a promise. It's a promise the American people have made, and someone needs to remind the President of the United States about that. Because as Senator Schumer said, he came before a joint session of Congress and just lied and lied about it. So what are they up to? They are working to sabotage Social Security from the inside. They are trying to eat at its heart and its brain. First of all, they are seizing that personal data. Fortunately, we have a federal judge that's put a temporary freeze on it. But what are they doing at the Social Security Administration? Well, first they shut down the phone lines. You know, I don't know what Elon Musk thinks. I know he's an AI whiz and a tech whiz, but there are a lot of Americans, millions of Americans, who depend on using the phone to connect with the Social Security Administration for questions. Well, they say they don't have to use the phones. They can go to the regional offices now. Well, they're closing the regional offices all over the country, 47 slated for closure by my count. Okay, so now you go to the regional offices. Well, who's going to be at the regional offices? Because they're talking about cutting 7,000 Social Security employees, 47% of the workforce. As I said, it's already at a 50-year low, the Social Security Administration workforce. So that's what they're doing. So why do you do this? You do it to undermine people's confidence and faith in Social Security so you can go right at taking down that very important promise. Because when they say Ponzi scheme, that's what they're trying to do when we know it's a promise. And we're here to blow the whistle on it and here to say that the nominee that they've put forward for the Social Security Administration is unfit to protect the promise of Social Security for the American people. And I thank my colleagues.
We'll take questions on this subject. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Bisignano, he told Senator Whitehouse he wouldn't privatize Social Security. He told Senator Hassan he wouldn't throw people off the program or cut benefits. Is it of your opinion that he was lying to the committee yesterday with these statements?
Yeah. What we said with respect to privatization is these policies that Senator Van Hollen just mentioned in terms of closing the offices and laying off personnel, in my view, are a prelude to privatization. Because when you adopt these policies, you're hollowing out the role for government. And then everybody says, oh my goodness, we got to help the seniors. And they say, well, we'll go get some private contractors. And then you're on your way. What the nominee yesterday lied about involves the whistleblower, and now particularly the fact that the Washington Post has confirmed a number of the things that were said.
This subject.
If Republicans do away with the Department of Education or district courts, but it's on the subject, if they do away with these things in the next funding bill, would you feel the same way that a shutdown is worse than the alternative?
Look, the bottom line is that they are doing such horrible things to the country that we're going to fight it in every way. Next.
What conversations are you having with the SSA nominee?
We had a hell of a conversation yesterday. I'll tell you that. He made a special point out of saying he had talked to nobody at the agency. And that just wasn't true. And I called him on it, and I asked him to respond to the allegations, and he bobbed, and he weaved, and he ducked. So you want to know what kind of conversation we have? Take a look at the record. Compare what he said to the whistleblower, now with some confirmation from the Washington Post, and it was enough of a conversation that it reconfirmed for me that this was someone not fit to carry on Social Security now at a crucial time. We need somebody to come in there. For example, my last question to him was, you haven't offered us a single idea with respect to phone systems. My colleagues asked about AI. He thinks that AI is a silver bullet for seniors. And I said, excuse me, I was director of the Gray Panthers for about 7 years, and I stay in touch with my friends, and there are not a lot of seniors clamoring for chatbots. They're just not. What they're clamoring for is to have somebody that they can talk to, they feel comfortable with. Didn't offer a single idea about it. Yesterday he talked about AI. In my office he talked about AI. It's clear he thinks that's a silver bullet, and it's consistent with what I think he's really up to, which is hollowing out government services and Social Security.
Our last question is going to go to Eddie Markey. Eddie, what are your thoughts on Social Security?
Edward J. Markey.
Thank you. Thank you all for your great leadership on this issue. When Howard Lutnick says that if his 94-year-old mother-in-law did not receive her Social Security check, that she would just assume it was going to come next month. Well, 22 million Americans would go into poverty if they did not get their Social Security check. 22 million Americans would be in poverty. They wouldn't have the money to pay for their food, for their rent. 22 million people. Over the age of 85, 2/3 of those people are women. who would not get a check that month and go into poverty. So one old guy, he said to me, you know, he said, people think because we're old, we're stupid. We're not stupid. We know the GOP stands for Get Old People. And we know that's what they're trying to do to Social Security and to Medicaid and to Medicare. Okay. So that's where we are, and we're going to fight. We're going to fight to protect that hard-earned benefit for every one of the 72 million Americans that depend upon it every single month. So thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, everybody.
Mr. Leader, one more on your letter about Signal, about the Signal chat. Do you agree, Leader Jeffries also sent a letter to the president yesterday calling for Pete Hegseth to be fired immediately. Do you agree
He
with the
should be
leader?
fired.